All right, welcome to Halitics on, what is it, Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining me. Let me see if I can get that music to stop. I don't know why I'm hearing myself twice. I knew I should have muted that tab yesterday. So I was just hearing myself. So at least I know I'm going out there, and you can hear me twice if you really want. But I would suggest the best way to do that is just start your YouTube channel at log in at Halitics on YouTube, and then just play the video twice, starting in different places. Maybe use two different browsers. Then you can hear me twice. I can't do my show while I'm listening to myself. Much as I might want to, I can't do it. Yeah, we're going to talk more about Ukraine. I do also want to focus on the conflicts, the internal conflicts in this country that are just so thorny, so difficult to overcome. I think I know the answer, but getting us to that place is probably all but impossible. I mean, about as likely as getting the Democrats to renounce endless war in Ukraine. I did see, and I wasn't even sure. And by the way, let me just say this. Well, first of all, you got to click like and you got to click subscribe. So bottom right of your screen, it's the Halitics square. Kind of stuck on 105 subscribers. I told you my goal by the end of this year is 1,000. I think it's possible. I think there's no question. I don't know who else does what I do. So if you find somebody who does a program like mine, let me know, because I'll start watching. I do watch other videos, other live streams, other hosts. And I try to play clips from them when they have a lot to add, or when I want to point out where I think they get something terribly wrong. I am concerned sometimes people become infatuated with a particular host or set of hosts, or even a candidate. And when the candidate or host says something that's clearly wrong, rather than reconsider what's the word I'm looking for? Not enamoration, right? You're enamored of something. Rather than reconsider our enamoration of the host, we sometimes may start thinking, well, gee, if they say it, it must be true. So if Jimmy is mocking global warming, climate change activists, people like Greta Thunberg, who are fighting to preserve some of the beauty still left on our planet, if Jimmy mocks them, maybe there's something there to mock, rather than saying, okay, well, Jimmy got this really wrong, and I've got to be a little more skeptical when I watch his videos and I listen to him. Doesn't mean I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it does mean I'm going to be a little bit more doubtful when I watch Jimmy Dore's programs. Unfortunately, I think all of us tend to watch with a personal view. So if someone says it, if we like them, we're more likely to believe them. If we don't like them, we're more likely to disbelieve them. And we have to fight that tendency to a degree. So we're always somewhat skeptical, and we're always questioning, is this person biased? What is their personal interest? How is their interest different than my own? And I've resisted this with Jimmy to a degree. He's often called a grifter. I don't really see that. But his interest ultimately, I believe, to a significant degree, is building more and more viewers for his program. And also, he's personally responding to those who have hated on him for years and years, many times unfairly, and he's just rejecting everything they have to say. That was a point that was made on my Facebook page. I shared it yesterday. Here's what Jay has to say. A couple comments from Jay. Great to hear from you, Jay. Take another good show, but take it easy on Dore, but also don't. So I'm going to take that as don't take it easy on Jimmy when he doesn't deserve to be given a break, when he doesn't deserve slack, when there's no pass to be issued. Jay also comments, I'll talk more about this comment tomorrow, or at least the subject of it, but he says, RFK Jr. is the only viable candidate to support universal housing. I'm not sure I've heard that. I think in any event, Dr. West is the candidate I support right now, viable or not. I think he is the one we have to rally behind. And I'm less and less supporting RFK Jr., his position. I missed this, but he did tell Crystal and Sagar a few weeks ago that he was not all on board Medicare for all. He does not support a single-payer universal plan. So one more reason that he is not the best candidate. He is not truly progressive. There is a candidate who supports universal single-payer health care and peace, and he supports a universal peace, that is Dr. West, which RFK Jr. doesn't. RFK Jr. seeming to support American empire in the Middle East, including obviously helping Israel persecute Palestinians and promoting more conflict with Iran. I won't spend much time today on that topic, but I'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow. Today, I want to start with this interview that Briahna Joy Gray, who, and I mentioned there's other hosts out there, so she's probably number two, right? Okay, number one, you're watching, but she's really good, and she has really good guests, and she's really tries, I think Briahna Joy Gray really does her best to be as open-minded as she can be and listen to people and also challenge and question even progressive orthodoxy. So I give her a tremendous amount of credit there. She has our friend of the show, Medea Benjamin, on. And I thought, well, should I interview Medea? Should I call Medea up? And I thought, hey, you know what? Briahna does such a good job, and she gets a lot of great information from Medea, who is probably, as far as I know, the world's foremost pro-peace activist. I don't know if there's anyone out there who's doing what Medea does and who is as consistently pro-peace as Medea. Of course, even with Medea, I have my disagreements on occasion. You'll hear a few of them, but mostly we're on the same page, almost 100%. By the way, 240. Let me get that number, 240-363-7190. Please call me. Do want to hear from you, 240-363-7190. I promise to take your call. You should be able to hear me as soon as you call in, so you can turn off your video, and then I'll get to you. And I've got a little chime, so now I hear the little chime when someone calls in. All right, let's get right to it. I've got a lot to talk about today. Here is BJG, Briahna Joy Gray, with Medea Benjamin.
Well, certainly being in Ukraine, people are very much, and for good reason, hating the invaders, the Russians, feeling like they want to recover every inch of territory back.
All right, let me just stop that for a second. So this was an interview that Briahna Joy Gray did yesterday, or at least it was posted yesterday. I assume it was also conducted yesterday with Code Pink, and you can see her pink background, Medea Benjamin, who's been on our program before. And you heard some double talk, some annoying background sound, and that's because Medea was in, I guess, I'm assuming, at Dulles Airport. She does live in the D.C. area. Maybe she's in New York, but I'm assuming she was coming back from Ukraine. So probably at Dulles, and she had to do the interview with Briahna, so she was talking while there was the PA system in the background. So here she is discussing her trip to Ukraine on behalf of peace.
They don't want to talk about negotiations. They want to talk about more weapons and winning the war. And I totally understand that. I mean, there were funerals going on every single day. There are rows and rows of fresh graves inside every major city. This is horrific, and it's understandable, the position of most Ukrainians. So I also want to say that those who advocate for peace talks have been incredibly repressed, and there is no room inside Ukraine for openly discussing options other than victory. And yet we are not in Ukraine, we are in the United States, and we understand that to stop the slaughter in Ukraine, it really needs to be a focus on negotiations, because the Russians are not going to stop. This war is not going to end on the battlefield unless it moves into a more extensive war or into a nuclear war. And those of us who want to see an end to the slaughter in Ukraine, I think, have to step back and look and say, where is this going? And when we see that it's only going to become worse and worse for the Ukrainian people, and perhaps for people all over Europe, that we have to figure out how we're going to push both sides to the negotiating table.
All right, so let me stop it there. There was a lot to what Medea had to say. Again, sorry for that kind of double audio. I mean, that's an interview that Briahna Joy Gray conducted. You can see the whole interview at Bad Faith on YouTube, so that's where I took it from. But I didn't feel like, calling Medea up and doing the interview with her. Maybe she wouldn't have had availability or wouldn't have even wanted to do it, since my audience is obviously a fraction of the size of Briahna Joy's. But I thought she got the information out that I wanted to share with you, so I didn't really see the need to disturb Medea further. A lot to go through. So first of all, what Medea said is when she was in Ukraine, she saw there's just, understandable hatred towards Russia. And Russia is destroying their country, right? I mean, the invasion has been horrific for the people of Ukraine more than anyone else. No one is suffering to the degree that the people of Ukraine are suffering. So it is a absolute, I don't know what you say, war is hell, right? I mean, one of the greatest American generals said that. He couldn't have been more correct. And he was part of the reason it was hell, but he wanted to end the Civil War once and for good, General William T. Sherman, and he did, along with Grant. So he told us war is hell. And here, if you don't believe me and you don't believe Sherman, here are some pictures. These are all 2023 photos of Ukraine. So there's just a city. You can see, I looked at this kind of from a distance. So how do you know how bad things are from this picture? Well, one thing you can see are all those craters, right? Cities, basically, this city is just a war zone. It's like Cologne or something. It's bombed out completely. It's in Ukraine. This is a winter picture, I think January of this year. And in the foreground, you can see lots and lots of scarred earth, and those are actually craters from the bombs. So this is what, Russia is doing to Ukraine. There's a little girl in her shelter, right? Her dugout shelter. Of course they hate Russia. Of course of course these images are going to inflame us against Russia. But as Medea said, to be rational, to be reasonable, to be stepping back, the question has to be, how do we prevent more pictures like this? How do we prevent more carnage, more horror? And according to Medea, and she should know she's there, and according to everything we're seeing, including the latest reports of this stalled counterattack that supposedly is going to free up areas of Ukraine that Russia took, we're not seeing that at all. We're just seeing more dead people, more blown up bodies, more destroyed cities. So hate Russia all you want. But if you want the slaughter to end, then we're going in the wrong direction. Refusing to talk to Russia whatsoever, except to say, you got to get out. You got to agree. We'll have negotiations when you agree to vacate all territory that you overran last year and that you've held on to bitterly since. And not only that, we want you out of Crimea as well. And we are moving forward with NATO in Eastern Europe, including Finland and Ukraine. Well, that just guarantees we're going to see more and more pictures like this. So clearly we can't do that. Clearly that's wrong-headed. Clearly that's misguided. Clearly that's not what we need to do. We need peace. We need to promote peace. We need to push for peace. And that is exactly what Medea is doing. I commented on Facebook. By the way, a Facebook friend of mine said, don't be so sure that this counteroffensive isn't going to be effective, isn't going to be successful. When I was saying, hey, this is crazy. We've got to have a ceasefire right now. And Blinken is saying no ceasefire until Russia is out of Ukraine. Well, that's not how you have a ceasefire. That's endless war. Obviously, the only way you have a ceasefire then is if you win a war. And what Medea told you is that's only going to happen if there's even more hostilities and increased hostilities, more and accelerating numbers of casualties and potentially a nuclear war. So clearly that's the wrong direction. But the counterattack has not worked out. It's not working out right now. Even with Russia internally divided, civilly divided. We're still not seeing success for Ukraine on the battlefield. And frankly, it's hard to imagine what that would look like, because I can't see Russia, which has the overwhelming advantage in soldiers and has been fighting a war of attrition, simply agreeing, if they are pushed back, to stop. There has to be concerted worldwide pressure. Otherwise, yeah, World War III. And ultimately, one or the other. And in fact, it's already spreading, as we talked about yesterday. Africa fighting Wagner in Africa, Wagner supported by Russia in Africa. It's really a proxy for, the Prigozhin coup, abortive coup, really was brought to the forefront how tightly Wagner and Russia really are. It's not like this was some kind of independent army whatsoever. It's really just an extension of the Russian Empire. And they are in Africa now as well. So, just as we are. It's a flailing elephant doing an incredible amount of damage. What we need to do, if we are human, if we care about our future, if we care about people, is everything possible to end the carnage.
But he does. We can hate the fact that the invasion ever started, but it did. And so really the question I ask other people is, where is your scenario taking us? If Ukraine is only going to be in a worse and worse position. And I think this idea that Ukraine can win is something that really is outside of reality, especially if you talk about being able to take back every inch, including Crimea. The Russians are just not going to allow that to happen. And I think people have to understand this is not just Putin, that there are a lot of people in Russia who are criticizing Putin for not doing more, for not going harder,
All right, so let me stop it there. Well, I didn't stop there. I had previously stopped there. What she's saying, Briahna Joy Gray is saying, is that there's not this internal pressure to end the war against Putin. Or that there's conflicting pressures, including a peace faction, which is basically repressed, which is basically suppressed, because Russia's not a free country whatsoever. It's less free than we are by a significant degree. And there's also an even harder line Russian faction. I was so astonished when I showed you that Ann Applebaum comment yesterday, where she said anything would be better than Putin. A civil war with conflict between the bloodiest general would still be preferable to Putin. And this is just insanity. It's rank insanity. You see the bloodiest generals kill millions and millions of people. We have the ability to pressure Putin. We should be using it. Instead, we're doing everything possible to try to corner him. And what does a cornered rat do? They fight furiously. That's what we are seeing. That is the fruit of the democratic policy in Ukraine. Let's continue, because this is just very, very important. And again, Medea was on the ground in Ukraine, and I don't know if she went into Russia. I'm assuming she did, but she has firsthand knowledge, which the rest of us, or at least most of us, I'm sure some of us do have that. I don't have that. All right, here we go.
What is the rationale that comes out of their mouth back to you about why they aren't more outspoken about this issue, and why?
All right, so I said earlier, just to give you the backdrop here, I said earlier that the war is a democratic war, that this is a war that is being pushed by the Democrats. And what you're hearing from Briahna Joy Gray there is a question: why aren't the Democrats, or what are they saying to you when you're telling them we've got to end this? When you're saying, when you meet Medea Benjamin, who is known on the Hill, who has progressive allies, or at least has worked with Democrats, presumably the squad. So you're in the halls of power, Medea, and you're talking to these people like AOC and, those folks. And what are they telling you, Pramila Jayapal? What is their answer? That is, when you say to them, we've got to end the killing. That is the question that Gray is asking Benjamin here.
They have completely declined to depart from Biden's line on this at all.
Well,
okay, so there you have it. They have completely failed to depart from Biden's line. They're pro-war. That simple. The squad is pro-war. We're not talking about centrist or third way or whatever they call themselves, third rail or third way Democrats, or, the yellow dog caucus or the blue dogs or whatever the hell they call themselves. We're talking about Josh Gottheimers and, Joe Manchin Democrats. This is the Pramila, the Jayapals, the Bernies. What are they telling you, Medea, about why they're lockstep in with Joe Biden?
some of them say to us, we are going to do something, and then they never do. Some of them say the problem with signing that letter was only one of timing, but that the content of the letter was right. And we say, all right, we'll put out another letter. And they say, oh, no, we got burned so badly on this. This is a key national security issue, and we're not privy to all the information. We're not on the foreign affairs committees. We have to listen to what the people who have access to more information are saying. I mean, they have all kinds of excuses. The biggest one, Briahna, they say, is that we're going to do something. And
then they don't, right? That's their excuse. And she was going to say, and then they don't, but it cut off just before she said that. So, I mean, this, and I have been adamantly opposed to the Democrat Party right now. I don't see how this endless war party. Now, if you said to me, well, Hal, look, I agree with you that the Democrats suck on Ukraine, and maybe the Republicans are better. In fact, I'm going to present the evidence that I believe pretty strongly shows they're better shortly. So, yeah, the Democrats suck on Ukraine, but on lots of other issues, they're better, like Medicare for all. I'm like, really? Are they bad? What have they done for that? What have they done to expand access for health care? What about the environment? How? Come on. The Democrats don't deny global warming. They don't deny it's real the way actually, well, I'm like, well, RFK Jr. kind of is, right? Then he said, we can't let our freedoms be taken away by those who are scaring us with the climate catastrophe. The climate catastrophe is real, and it's not the fear of it that is costing us our freedoms. It's actually the reality of it. And he's like the progressive Democrat running. So I don't see the Democrats as better on the climate crisis. They agreed 100%, or very close to it, to greenlight Willow Creek. Well, the MVP, that was part of the dirty debt deal. So really, I mean, I guess they're a little better, on cultural issues. They'll scream and cry that they're better and gnash their teeth. And then we still saw Roe v. Wade repealed, reversed. So I'm not buying this. I'm not buying any defenses for the Democrats right now. I'll accept that on balance, on more issues, yeah, probably the Republicans. Okay. But even when it comes, big arguments, well, we can't let the courts. Last I checked, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, their decisions ain't so bad. Let's go back to, I think this is the video we haven't yet heard. Let me this. I think this is the last segment I want to play of Medea with Briahna Joy Gray. And it was a great interview. I'm cut and pasted parts of it for you that I really felt like commenting on. I could have done the whole thing. It's about 18, 20 minutes, I think. It's well worth your time if you want to go watch it. So here we go again. Hopefully my head won't superimpose over. Let me move my head down to the bottom so that when it's just Medea on screen, I won't have my head superimposed over.
We have people like Matt Gaetz, who is leading on efforts around this, and that is not somebody that I want to follow. Neither is Lauren Boebert, neither is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't want to follow them, and I want to follow the people who are people like members of the squad, people like Pramila.
All right, so that didn't work, by the way. My goal here was to try to keep myself from you're seeing my head instead of Medea's, and her head was kind of in the middle. But I want to play this clip one more time, because this is the response to those who argue the Democrats are better. Or what I will always say is the Democrats are not as bad. The Republicans are even worse. Because I'm not going to, the Democrats are better. It sounds like, well, the Democrats aren't so bad. They're kind of good. And the only way they're relatively not horrific is when you compare them with the alternative. So let me play this clip one more time. And she says something, Medea, that I thought was very curious.
We have people like Matt Gaetz, who is leading on efforts around this, and that is not somebody that I want to follow. Neither is Lauren Boebert, neither is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't want to follow them.
All right, so let me stop it there for a minute. I don't understand that statement. Medea says, with regard to Gaetz, Boebert, and Taylor Greene, I don't want to follow them. And I'm like, well, first of all, you're not following them. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Medea is leading the peace fight. She's not following the bad people, if that's how you want to characterize Taylor Greene, Boebert, and Gaetz. And I presume she sees them to a degree like that because she said she doesn't want to follow them, right? She said, I don't want to follow them. So, okay, but you're not following them. If anything, they're kind of sort of following you and I remember well over a year ago, outside the White House in Lafayette Square, protesting the war as it was beginning, as it was getting underway, as the carnage, the death, the killing was really just ramping up. I was at a rally in Lafayette Park. I was going to say I was on the mall. I wasn't. And I was there with Medea. And I'd show you the picture. They said I forgot to get them for you. So you're not following anyone, Medea. So I don't really understand your concern about following Gaetz, Boebert, and Taylor Greene. But if your argument or if what you're really saying is you don't want to work with them, or you'd rather work with the Democrats, well, okay, you'd rather, I get it. I presume you feel more comfortable with someone like Pramila Jayapal because she says she supports Medicare for all. She says she believes in the climate catastrophe. I understand that, but I mean, you work with whoever you can work with. I mean, just be glad there are some people who are against the war in Ukraine, I guess, is my position.
And I want to follow the people who are people like members of the squad, people like Pramila Jayapal, who originally started that letter. And I think
so that was a letter from, I guess, last year, where Jayapal got some of the squad members to say that they called on Biden to look for peaceful alternatives or to promote peaceful alternatives in Ukraine. And they were attacked. They were attacked by other Democrats. They were attacked by the neocons, including many Democrats. I think Hillary Clinton went after them and others. Oh, we have to all be together. So we have to all be in favor of slaughter, of endless war, is the argument. I don't get why. I mean, so they retracted the letter, they pulled it back. I don't know, why are cowards like that the people you want to be working with, Medea? I mean, of course, we want to work with everyone. But from what I've seen of the right-wing extremists in Congress, they're fighting for what they seem to really believe and what they're, I mean, are they crazy? Yes. Are they wrong on many issues? Absolutely. But they're right here. They're right on getting out of Ukraine. And I don't know why you'd rather work with a bunch of feckless worms like the Squad. And sadly, it looks like Bernie Sanders. I don't understand that. Why is that who you'd rather work with? It doesn't make sense to me, Medea. So you agree with them on some issues, but obviously you don't on others. Again, to me, you fight for those who fight for you and who fight for what you believe in. And there can be no question that the Dems in Congress are not fighting for any of the priorities. They may mouth platitudes about supporting some of them. They're not, in fact, fighting for any of Medea Benjamin's priorities. And that, to me, would be call into question why you would ever want to work with them.
It's getting more and more uncomfortable for them. We keep thinking there's got to be a break. There was a break, and that was Ro Khanna. And Ro Khanna, when he came out on CNN after that letter was retracted, said, well, of course that makes sense. Of course we should have negotiations. And he got positive feedback for it. We talked to him, and we talked to him regular, and he keeps saying that. But yet he doesn't take any initiative. He doesn't come out with any new letter that we could then use to pressure members of Congress on. So it is very frustrating. What we're seeing in the Republican Party is that while it was on the extreme right, there are now efforts for people more in the conservative part of the Republican Party, not the extreme right. People like Mike Lee, congressman, a senator who in the past has worked with Bernie Sanders on foreign policy issues. They came together and brought a left-right coalition together on the war in Yemen and the War Powers Act. And so we were saying to them now, well, why don't we do the same thing? And Mike Lee, with other members like Rand Paul, did come out with a letter to Biden on this issue, but he couldn't get Bernie Sanders. He couldn't get any of the Democrats to join in with this.
All right, so how tragic is that? Even Bernie, who claims independence from the Democratic Party, refused to join his old pal, Mike Lee. Bernie in 2016, I believe, touted his ability to work across the aisle, to reach across the aisle. And he gave a good example of that, his work with Mike Lee, Republican U.S. Senator from Utah, to condemn the war in Yemen that was being led by Saudi Arabia, but that the United States was supporting, was providing material in support of. And he and Lee actually got some legislation through that reduced a significant amount of the help that we were providing Saudi Arabia use to kill Yemenis. So he did something really good there with Mike Lee against the mic. And Bernie also worked with Mike Lee to help veterans. And he got a big award from the veterans in 2015, I believe, which nobody ever talked about because the Democratic establishment wanted Hillary. And were very successful at keeping the media from reporting that Bernie was an award winner that previous year. So Bernie has worked with Mike Lee, and that was with Mike Lee that he also did that, and he got that award. So Bernie has had real cred. He has real cred working across the line in support of peace, and yet now he will not do it. It's awful. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we've got to go, folks. There's no question we have to go in a different direction. And there are those of you who support this war, and I don't get it. I mean, did you hear what Medea said? If you're going to say, well, they're going to get, it's not going to win, okay? First of all, if your goal is to win, if you have to show Putin and win, that ain't happening. That ain't happening without some kind of, permanent war of attrition that almost certainly would lead to many millions of deaths. We've already got hundreds of thousands. How many more people have to die? Is it worth it? I just can't see that. Sorry, I just can't. But when it comes to standing up to power, speaking truth to power, here, group of senators, April 20, group of senators and House members expressed concern over U.S. aid to Ukraine. So the group of senators and House members did send a letter that was written by U.S. Senator Mike Lee, I just mentioned, from Utah, and Eli Crane. I don't know who the hell he is. He's a representative from Arizona. So they sent a letter to President Biden expressing concern about U.S.'s response to ongoing conflict in Ukraine, and they emphasized the need for a clear diplomatic strategy. Let me see if I can blow that up a little bit. A clear diplomatic strategy to bring the war to a rapid conclusion. Not one Dem, not one friggin' Dem could be found to sign this letter. I think we've got all the names on that screen there. Let me see if I can blow it up for you a little bit there more. All Republicans. And you heard what Medea said. Bernie couldn't be bothered. Bernie couldn't be bothered to sign this letter. It's so upsetting. And what is that about? Because they all have to present a united front? So you have to all be wrong? That's what we call blind loyalty, not loyalty to the American people. And frankly, Medea made a good point. It's not even really loyalty. I don't know if I played the clip for you, but it's not even loyalty to the party, because what they're doing is bad for the Democratic Party. It hurts the Democratic Party. Every representative and senator who signed that letter is a Republican. J.D. Vance, Rand Paul, Mike Lee are the U.S. senators. Crane, Mary Miller, don't know who she is. Paul Gosar, he is one of the 9/11, Jan 6 guys. Gates, Dan Bishop, Barry Moore. I think Bishop's a little less extreme. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that, so don't quote me. Andy Biggs, another Jan 6 guy. Anna Paulina Luna, Lauren Boebert, Tim Burchett, Ralph Norman, Taylor Greene. They're all better. A couple of other names. They're all better on this issue than every Democrat. There's no excuse for that. We have to leave that. The party has to be, I believe, abandoned. I don't see how we can continue. If someone wants to, how do we continue to vote for these people?
The Ukrainian people. Ukraine must win in its struggle for freedom and democracy today. We are all invested in that. And I've strongly advocated and voted for. We aren't
all invested. Why would we? He's saying that to a Raskin, not a squad member, but a pretty highly considered to be pretty darn progressive member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, saying to an event sponsored by military contractor, defense weapon manufacturer, Lockheed Martin, we're all invested in Ukraine winning. What is the matter with this guy? And what is the matter with us on the left if we continue to view him as an ally?
Ukraine. Economic, financial, military, security, strategic, humanitarian, diplomatic, and most of it has been in the form of military and security assistance. Billions of dollars to fight a just and defensive war against...
billions of dollars poured down the drain so more and more people can be killed. This guy's supposed to be for Medicare for all. Think of the money how that money could be used for healthcare for Americans. Or how about using that money to promote a better world, a better agenda? You know, he raises a lot of money, this guy, from individuals. And he's using that money to promote endless war, more carnage, more death, not to heal people, not to prevent the needless slaughter. And again, not just in Ukraine, but now obviously we're seeing that conflict spread to Africa and likely into the Middle East as well. All right, it is time for me to move to another topic. I don't want to spend all program on this. I promised you I would talk about this now. I saw this. Oh, no, we're going to stick with this. Sorry, one more. So I'm always about solutions, right? We can all wring our hands. We can all cry in our beer. We can all say how awful things are. And by God, they are. My gosh, they are awful. But it's not enough to do that. It's just flaccid. It's just, mental masturbation. One of the things about being on YouTube and doing this on the internet is I can just say anything. There's no filter. There's no FCC over my shoulder. And I never minded the FCC. I never got in any trouble with, the radio station did because there was a host who refused point blank, not to curse on at least one occasion, but which was very frustrating for me. Trust me, it was very, very frustrating for me. But I never minded. I have no problem with not cursing. But since I can every now and then, or I can use some off-color language every now and then, I will. I said there has to be an answer. We can't just be negative all the time. So here is the answer.
Cornel, you talk about militarism. I want to ask you about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In March of last year, you told The New Yorker, we must try to stop the war, recognizing that the American empire has little or no moral authority when it comes to violation of international law and the overthrow of national sovereignty, as in Latin America, the Middle East, and Asia. You've also called Putin, you've been severely critical of President Putin for the invasion. Talk about your views on what happened, what is happening, and how the war needs to end.
All right, I want to just stop it there and we'll hear from Dr. West. But I was pleased that Amy Goodman did this because, and again, I've been on this program, I've been pretty negative towards Jimmy Dore of late. But Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate have done a really nice job, in my opinion, of exposing democracy now for its failures to take on the military-industrial complex, for its failure to call out just how immoral our adventurism, our military adventurism in the Middle East has been for decades. Amy Goodman hasn't been good on issues of war and peace. She has not been on taken a cudgel to the Biden administration for persecuting Julian Assange. She has not exposed, as she should have, the utter vapidity of the Russiagate and Ukraine-gate attacks on Trump. She has, to a significant degree, rolled over and put her paws in the air when it comes to American empire. So I'm really pleased that here she is entertaining Dr. West and allowing him to explain exactly why we need to get peace. We need to push for peace right now in Ukraine.
It's had its territory cut back. Of course, its economy is shrinking. And then you've got the American empire, which is the most powerful empire in the history of the world. In fact, it's the 68th empire out of the 70, going back to the beginning of the human species. And so on the one hand, you have the promise of the American empire to the elites in the Russian Empire: we will not move an inch. And within decades, 14 of the satellite countries of the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, are part of NATO. There's missiles right on the borders and boundaries of the Russian Empire. Now, we know empires behave like empires. I mean, if there's missiles in Canada and Mexico, the U.S. government would blow them to smithereens quick. We saw it in Cuba in 1962. So that empires behave like empires. They're greedy. They're driven by predatory capitalist dispositions. They're obsessed with hierarchy. They're concerned with domination and conquest. The Alexander the Great, associated with a grand empire. So that in that regard, there's no doubt in my mind that the expansion of NATO has played a crucial role in the wounded Russian Empire, with all of its repression, all of its regimentation. Let us never forget about the thousands of Russian brothers and sisters who are going to jail in opposition to gangster Putin's criminal.
All right, let me just stop it there for a moment. And I want to get through this quickly because I do want to play the other clip I promised you of the graduate at Queens College. West is giving an outstanding, relatively brief history of the conflict and why it's happening, and how the West is so far from blameless. And because we're complicit, we have an absolute duty to try to stop the bleeding rather than to keep the wounds gushing open. And I mean, he's not, and at the same time, though, and I give West a ton of credit for this, he's not excusing Putin either. He's saying, no, he's a gangster, he's a bad guy, he's a tyrant. But, okay, that's the landscape. How do we respond?
No invasion. But he's pushed against the wall and he responds. That's how heads of empire respond. So we've got to be in solidarity with the suffering of Ukrainian brothers and sisters. But we have to recognize NATO is an instrument of American imperial foreign policy. We've seen it over and over again. And so we're witnessing a proxy war. There must be a ceasefire. There must be a stopping of that war. Why? We're on the road to nuclear.
All right, I'm going to end it there. There's a lot more. That is a really good interview as well. I do commend to your attention Democracy Now! With Dr. Cornel West, who at this point, I believe, is the only legitimate, truly progressive candidate running for president. I don't know if you heard that thunder in the background. It's pretty wild here, but I want to just finish this real quick. So I'm going to move on right now from Ukraine. Hope to talk to you, if not today, maybe tomorrow. Join me. You have until the end of the week. Then I'll be off for a few, about 6-7 business days. I saw this video. I had a reaction to it. I'm going to play it. And then I'm going to talk about what my real solutions. Because remember, the show is about solutions. It's not about wringing our hands at how bad things are. It's about solutions. This is last week, I believe, at Queens College, Manhattan, New York City, not Manhattan.
A student graduating, it is her day. She's seen grabbing the microphone. Very little context is provided until she provides it directly. Here it is.
Okay, let's go. You didn't let me get my moment, so I want to say my name is Carnage and I'm graduating today. I don't like how you snatched the mic out of my hand, so today is going to be all about me.
All right, so that was woman Kadia Iman, I believe is her name. I looked it up, Kadia Iman. And when I saw that video, I was like, that's just totally bad behavior. There's nothing that could possibly excuse what Ms. Kadia Iman did in that picture. And she said in the video this was at the graduation, and the woman who's holding the mic was going from graduate to graduate, asking them to say their name into the mic. She was holding the mic, the woman, as I understand it. She was holding the mic. And she did not give the mic to each student to say. Instead, she would stick the mic under their mouths. And the reason they did that at Queens College is because they've been having a lot of concerns that various students would give speeches and talk about this or that or the other thing. And, they didn't want that. Now, I get why a student would want to give a speech. I mean, if I were there, I would want to give a speech about American empire and how we need to end it. So I understand both the desire of the students or the grads, actually, at that point, to pontificate when there's a large audience and it's all being videotaped. But I also understand the universities or colleges' position, which is we don't want that. We just want you to say your damn name and move along. Well, Ms. Iman was very upset, apparently. As you can see on the video, she certainly appears upset. And her argument was that you didn't give me a chance to say my name. You didn't give me a chance, so I'm going to say it because today's my day. That's exactly what she said. And she said to the woman, you snatched the mic out of my hand. Now, that is false. What happened was Ms. Iman snatched the mic out of the college staffers' hands, the Queens College staffers' hand, because she wasn't, the procedure was that the students don't hold the mic at all. Only the staffer does, for the reason I stated. I found this behavior reprehensible. I don't see any other way to see it, really. But the response has been very mixed, and to a degree, not 100% whatsoever, but to a degree, there is definitely a race gulf, a race divide, with many African Americans, perhaps more African American women, but maybe not. And the host of that program you saw, who defends Khadi Iman, saying it was her day, and it's very important. The white lady, I think he calls her, others are calling her Karen, didn't give Ms. Iman enough time to give her name, and she was, names are very important to us. I understand all that. I just don't see that there's any way to justify the response, which was aggressive, which was violent. And she yells even, this is my day. Well, it's kind of her day, but it's the day of probably a few thousand students at Queens College. And she took control of that day. And I think it was wrong. But I understand. I truly get why there is this rush to defend her. We live in such a profoundly unequal society. And people are going to side with those in an unequal society whom they believe are on their side, who they believe are victims, similar victims. And when they're confronted with someone that they believe is part of the opposition. And I don't believe that a white woman educator is part of the opposition. I don't think she's responsible. I think the woman in that video, the white woman who had the mic aggressively pulled out of her hands, and what I wouldn't exactly call an assault, but it was close to an assault. I don't think she's the problem. She probably makes a very low salary. She's probably well underpaid, and is just barely trying to make it in New York City like so many others. But we cannot ignore the fact that people aren't going to be, when they feel treated unfairly, when they perceive, often correctly, that, and in this case, let's face it, I mean, it is correct. African Americans have far less wealth. I think the average African American family has about $10,000. The average white family has about 100,000 in savings. So those are massive differences. In New York State is the most unequal in the nation. There are more billionaires than in any other state. And at the same time, I believe, there may be more in California because Silicon Valley, but I'm pretty sure it's New York State. New York State has the most billionaires. Certainly, it's the highest concentration of billionaires. And at the same time, it has abysmal poverty. And although the face of poverty in New York State is certainly not black, it's disproportionately black. Do I think Kadia Iman was the victim in that exchange? Absolutely not. But I understand that impulse to rally behind someone who looks like you, who is speaking up against somebody that you perceive, I think wrongly in this case, is part of the problem. If we really want a peaceful society, if we want peace, we have to work for justice. And that always means everyone has enough and no one has too much. Doesn't mean we all have exactly the same. It doesn't mean we all live in an identical house with an identical number of rooms and we all have the same size bank account. That's not possible, and I don't think that's even desirable. But what it does mean is that everyone has a safe, secure home. Everyone has access to a good education. Everyone can retire. Everyone has enough, and no one has too much. If you want peace, then you have to work for justice. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for watching Halitics.